going to take you on a tour of my backyard. There's something interesting I want to show you. I live close to nature. I don't live in nature, but I live in a house in civilization close to nature. Just entering the ravine now. Into the forest we go. We get these mushrooms or puffballs, whatever they are, after a rain. One winter I got a length of 250 foot length of nylon rope. I think it was 1/4 inch. I tied it from a tree up here across the creek and to a tree down there. No, actually that over there. 250 feet long. My son was a witness. I had made a little strap with some pulleys, and I rode that zip line from the high side of the creek down to the other side and slammed into a tree, but I was well padded and protected. I just did it because I wanted to do it. 250 foot zip line. Look at these plants. I don't know what they are. Hoping they're not poisonous. A lot of dead trees have fallen across the path. This is the Black Mud Creek. I'm going to cross out that log right there. It's flowing about halfway, I would say 50%. At the beginning of the year in the spring, it's twice as deep as this, and about 2 months from now it'll be down to half of this flow. What I wanted to show you is up there. We'll go there in a minute. This will work. Little clamshells. I have seen fish in this creek. There's little 6-inch long fish that I was never able to identify conclusively. But I have seen what I can only describe as salmon. They look like salmon, and the ones I saw were about 14 inches long, 2 of them. One was white, like an albino, and the other one was gray colored, like a fish, like a regular fish. We're going up there. Found in the creek. What would you say that is? I couldn't climb up on that cliff to show you those black striations, or whatever they're called, little black layers. You see the black stripes? That's coal. I couldn't get there because I don't have climbing gear, and even if I did have climbing gear, I don't know how to use it. But in the winter I climbed up there. It was much easier, and I got coal out of it. And you might say, how do you know that it's coal and not just burnt wood? Well, I took some of it home and it burnt. As far as I know, burnt wood turns to ash, which is white, and coal is black and it burns, and the stuff I took out of that seam burnt, just like coal would. Now let's think about, what is coal? Coal is concentrated ancient sunshine. It's natural. It's as natural as the wind. It's as natural as flowing water. It is made by Mother Nature, and we can pick it out of the ground for free at no charge, just like we can put a windmill up and capture the energy of the wind at no charge, and we can put up a dam and capture the energy of the flowing water at no charge. Why does coal exist? Coal and oil. Let's talk about all fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are properly named. They are a fossil. They were created at a unique time in the Earth's history. They were created at a time long after trees had evolved, but before anything evolved that could eat dead trees. Trees were the first plant life to contain a thing called lignin. Now, lignin is a type of sugar. It doesn't taste sweet, it's just a type of sugar. It's very tough and it's very hard to break down. So guess what? Mother Nature makes things that Mother Nature can't break down. For a while. It took millions and millions and millions of years. Now, this was long before dinosaurs roamed the earth. Hundreds of millions of years before dinosaurs. So what ended up happening is trees evolved. Trees would die. They would not rot. Not the lignin part anyway. Vast forests were covered by silt, by oceans, by changing tectonic plates and changing elevations. And what was left over from the trees and the plant life, other plant life that got trapped in the silt and the flooding, was they were covered, kept away from oxygen so they couldn't react. They were compressed and bacteria went to work on them. So it's a combination of chemical and biological processes that created oil and natural gas. Now, there's a high amount of CO2 in fossil fuels. Where did that CO2 come from? It must have come from somewhere. As we know, all living systems have to have inputs and outputs. So we have our one input, which was the ancient, dead, but not rotten trees. We have the conditions. I don't know if you call that an input, but it was a condition of being covered up. And we had CO2, which the trees had, guess what? Drawn it out of the atmosphere. So you will find that all of the CO2 that is being released by fossil fuels, by burning them, originally came from our early atmosphere. Now, our early atmosphere, depending on how far you want to go back, was both warmer and cooler than it is today. So climate change is natural and normal. It is controlled or most heavily influenced by the sun and Milankovitch cycles. What are Milankovitch cycles? Well, that's the rotation of the Earth and the wobble of the Earth. The Earth in space is wobbling many different directions. And depending on how much sunlight we get, which is influenced by sunspots and mostly our distance from the sun, influences our global temperature. And if you correlate the data of CO2 levels from early core samples, you will find that CO2 is a lagging indicator. It's not a leading indicator. As the world warms up, about 800 to 8,000 years later, the CO2 rises because there's more plant activity absorbing CO2 at times, and then if plants die back, we get a little bit drier, then plants die off and they release the CO2. So the Earth has never had too much CO2 in the air to snuff out life. It has never had too much CO2 in the air to overheat the Earth, never. And that's because CO2 is not the control knob of global temperature. The next thing that we should know is that the Earth has, maybe as much as 5 times, been too cold for life on Earth. Now, exactly when this happened is very, very long time ago. But life had evolved for at least some, or at least the one time that the entire Earth was covered in ice. It's called Snowball Earth. You can look it up. Life was lucky, very lucky, to carry on. 1 to 5 times completely covered in ice, and life was able to survive. Never have we been too hot for life. And none of it was related to CO2. CO2 was related to temperature as a lagging indicator of warmer temperatures, not a leading character. So, I regret not being able to climb a 85-degree angle to bring you guys a real close-up of the coal seam just behind my house. But I think I've maybe enlightened you a little bit, given you something to think about, to put your mind at ease that the way forward for us is to use all the fossils that we have, fossil fuels we have left, to build nuclear power plants. Nuclear power plants are clean and they're safe, and eventually we're all going to have to go electric. Even though now is not the time to go electric, probably 250, 300 years from now, we're going to have to start in earnest going electric. And it will be a less fun world when we finally have to go electric. The only other thing I can see is perhaps alcohol, industrial quantities of alcohol to power things that need liquid fuel, but it will be quite expensive. So, something to think about. Thanks for joining me. More to come. I'm going to make 2 statements, both of which are true. Statement number 1. There is a finite amount of fossil fuels on the Earth. Statement number 2. We will never run out of fossil fuels. How can both statements be true? The reason is because the end of the Stone Age. If you look at the Stone Age did not end because we ran out of rocks. Still had plenty of rocks. The Stone Age came to an end because we had better technology emerge from our sometimes brilliant human minds. We're going to burn fossil fuels for at least 200 years into the future. Somewhere around 200 to 250 to maybe 300 at the most, we're going to run out of fossil fuels. What's going to happen is fossil fuels become more and more expensive, and fewer people will buy fossil fuels. At that point, the free market will start shifting us gradually over to electric mobility. It will be affordable. It will be convenient. Everything that the Western governments are screwing up right now will be done rapidly, cheaply, and efficiently by the free market. Forcing electric vehicles onto us before they're ready, when the free market hasn't bought in yet, and they're only doing it because of subsidies, and they're going to quit as soon as the subsidies quit, is one of the most damaging things that our governments could do to us. So we're all going to switch back to fossil fuels. Any car company that, I'm making this video in 2022, any car company that produces fossil fuel cars, internal combustion engine, also known as ICE, ICE, they're gonna make a killing. They're gonna make tons of money. Because a lot of people don't want to get burnt up by a lithium fire in a crumpled up aluminum cage that they can't escape from after a minor fender bender. Most people don't want to have their house burned down around them by the electric vehicle parked in the garage that just spontaneously bursts into flame while it's recharging. There's a lot of problems to overcome with electrification. But I wanted to put your mind at ease that we have plenty of time with fossil fuels. We're going to go through the expensive stage, the conservation stage, and the free market's going to take over and just going to run with electrification. We've got plenty of time for all that to happen. There's no rush. We're not going to starve as long as governments stay out of the way. So rest easy, burn gas, burn coal. CO2 is the stuff of life. The more CO2 you put in the air, the more the plants love it. So that's one of the things I wanted to get across in this video, is to put your mind at ease about fossil fuels.